Welcome to Casual Politics, Denis Skinner. Thank you very much for accepting my request, and I'm very grateful to you. You absolutely need no introduction. You've been a member of Parliament since 1970. My first question is, over past months, Labour Party lost two of its two giant political figures, Michael Mitchell and Denis Healey. How sad was you to hear that both of them, they passed away in less than a month?
Well, I had a different feeling in relation to the two. Denis Healey, we were keeping note of over the course of the last 2 or 3 years, ever since Edna died, his wife, and I was very pleased to hear from you that Denis kept his marbles right until the very end, because he was, without doubt, a very effective speaker in Parliament during those years he was there. And even though one of his most famous quotes is talking about Mrs. Thatcher being ravaged by a dead sheep, in other words, Geoffrey Howe, the truth is he used quotes like that all the time. That was probably the most famous one, but he did know how to use words in Parliament, and a lot of people seem to be searching for words of 5 syllables, whereas Denis Healey was trying to put things in a context in which a lot of people would understand exactly what he meant, because politics is trying to get a message across without frightening people off. And every so often you get somebody who's capable of doing that. Denis Healey was such a man.
And despite all your differences, did you still regard him as one of your friends in Parliament?
Oh yeah. He'd come in the tea room and we'd sit and talk about this, that, and the other. And he never once ever raised the issue about him versus Ben when he won by a tiny little majority, and I was helping Ben at the time. He never once spoke about those days, really. He was more concerned about trying to get a message across right until the very end of his life, really. I never knew him making a statement that wouldn't somehow or other resonate with ordinary working class people. And it's very important in politics that I'll give you an example. When I go back to Bolsover and somebody says to me, "Denis, I heard you last Wednesday. Do you know what you said to Cameron? I told my missus day before." And that is like the greatest compliment you can have, whether it was the day before, the day after, or whatever. The truth is, what he was demonstrating to me is that he understood what I said.
But is it sad that we don't have in Labour Party, as in the Conservative Party, we don't have figures like Denis Healey anymore? Those who fought for their country during Second World War. And then
Well, I don't think there are many in the Tory party either. I mean,
yes, we don't have them anymore.
No, but I mean, the Second World War was when I was a young kid in a coal mining area, and I was shaped by the Second World War, even though I was about 10 years of age at the time. I was shaped by that and the coal mining job that I did later on. And we're all shaped by those events, but so you can't expect somebody to come along now. We've got a fella that fought in Afghanistan and Iraq, but there's only one. And you'd not expect any more anyway. I mean, the idea that somehow or other you're looking for veterans. Cameron's never had a gun in his hand. I mean, I don't think there's been a veteran since Healey, Tony Benn, who was in the Air Force.
Peter Carrington as well.
And who?
Peter Carrington.
Yeah, but he's
Conservative.
Yeah, but he was in the Lords, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Lord Carrington.
Yeah.
Well, I've not seen the hide of hair in for ages. No. Is he still alive?
Yes, 96. I did his last interview as well.
Well, he's doing very well then.
He's still alive.
Yeah.
And but those great parliamentarians, so as Michael Foot was a great parliamentarian, Denis Healey, why we don't produce them anymore?
Well, it's mainly because of television.
Are you against it? Are you against
No,
television?
I voted for television to come into the House of Commons. I mean, you can't stop trends that are bound to take place. For instance, you can't stop the social media. Today I've just been photographed on 20 different phones within about 2 minutes flat. That could not have happened 2, 5, 10 years ago.
And do you think that now it's all about publicity?
Well, without a doubt. I mean, the people that shape politics today are those that have got the power, like Andrew Neil, who works for the BBC, an ultra-right winger. He's had more hair transplants than Michael Jackson in order that he can stay on telly. But people like him are very formidable in the sense that they help to portray a right-wing slant to politics of a kind I've never known over the course of all the years I've been involved.
And you always...
But I think it's more a right-wing now than ever before.
You always accuse BBC of being biased. And
yeah, they are.
The last month, you had a fight with one of BBC's
she proved it. She actually proved what I'd been saying. That she saw me walking across the green. She said, "Are you looking for Jeremy? Do you want a job?" I said, "No, of course I don't want a job." I told Jim Callaghan in 1976 I didn't believe in patronage, and I don't. I said, so the idea that I'm wanting a job, and then right at the very end, she tried to imply that I was still searching for a place.
And that Jeremy Corbyn didn't offer you any job, that's what
Which
she
is
said.
Totally untrue. I wasn't looking for one. Jeremy knew I didn't want one. I don't believe in patronage. I believe that people should be elected to the cabinet and the shadow cabinet.
And are you proud for having served your constituency for more than 45 years?
Well, I've been lucky. I mean, that's mainly because I've had very good treatment from the National Health Service. I had a heart bypass in 2003, a very serious operation, and survived it. I had cancer in 99 in the bladder, and they managed to get it out in time. And so I can only thank the National Health Service for giving me a chance to represent Bowls over 45 years.
And is NHS getting privatised under the Tories?
Well, I think there was quite a bit of privatisation under that Act of Parliament, the Health and Social Care Act, that they brought in under the coalition. And left to their own devices, the Tories would privatise health service, hook, line and sinker if they got the chance.
And do you think that is Jeremy Hunt's right to increase doctors' wages?
He's not increased doctors' wages.
11%.
No, he's not increased doctors' wages by 11%. You see, here's another example of somebody buying this nonsense when it's not true. This wage increase was all about wages at the weekend. Now, in the industry that I worked in, down a coal mine, if we worked on Sunday, it would be double time. Doctors, if they work on Sundays, it would be double time. And so the whole ethos of what he was saying was that he was using the doctor's pay within the context that the most important 48 hours was Saturday and Sunday. Yes, people do get extra money for working at those hours in nearly every profession.
Because they want NHS to be open.
So they didn't get an 11% pay rise at all. They had a cut because they were already getting payment for working during the weekend anyway. And it was a cut. And you were naive enough to buy it and think it was an 11% increase. It isn't.
And is it fair that working class people, they say the tax credit to be cut, to get cut?
Yes, yeah. The average person and the lower end of the income scale has lost, on average, £1,300 as a result of the tax credit cuts, yes.
And so, what do you think that was Gordon Brown wrong to abolish 10 10% rate, 10p rate?
Yes, of course he was. I think he probably knows that himself now.
And you said that James Callaghan, let's go to Denis Healey and those years. You said that James Callaghan offered you a job. Which job was it and why?
Never got round to it because he said, he took me in the no lobby and he said, I'd like to have a word with you, Dennis. He said, this is the first week that they've recorded Prime Minister's question time on the radio, which was true. And he said, I want to know, how do you think it's going? And I said, well, you want to stop interjecting on hecklers. I said, because the people listening to the radio don't know what the hecklers are saying. So that's the first thing you want to do, stop interjecting on hecklers. And then he said, by the way, I thought I'd better tell you, I'm going to have a reshuffle in the summer, because this was in July. And I said, oh, hiya, Jim. I said, I've got a friend sits next to me called Bob Cryer. He'd make a very good minister. And he says, I'm trying to be serious here, Dennis. I said, if you want to get really serious, let me tell you this. I said, I'm not going to fall over because you might offer me a job, because I don't believe in patronage. I believe you should be elected to the shadow cabinet and to the cabinet, like they are in Australia. That's the system that they have. That when you get to Parliament, the MPs vote for those people that are going to serve in the cabinet. Just like in local government, when a local authority gets elected, say a Labour authority in Bolsover, the first thing they do after the election in May is to get together and elect a shadow cabinet. That's what they do. And they are the people that will take the jobs on the local authority. Now that's called democracy. And that's what should happen here in Parliament, instead of being based upon patronage and being in the gift of one person at the top of the tree.
But what do you make of special advisors?
I'm against them as well.
They go on and they become MPs and then they become ministers and then prime ministers as well.
Yeah, well, I've been against that idea as well. They wouldn't survive under my system if it was democratic, because they would have to get elected by their fellow MPs. And with the best will in the world, it wouldn't happen if somebody came as a special advisor and then within another 6 months became a cabinet minister. It couldn't happen under a democratic system.
And do you think that this country doesn't have a democratic system?
No, it isn't democratic.
It lacks a democratic.
Members of Parliament are elected by the people, and from the moment on, the cabinet of any government in this building, in all the years I've been here, has been decided by the Prime Minister of the day. That is aristocratic. And I oppose it, and always have done. And just in case people don't understand it, there are countries in the world where it doesn't happen. And so, for instance, in Australia, when they've had the general election, and let's say Labour is elected to power, then the Labour Prime Minister has to call his members of Parliament together, and they will then, together in a combined fashion, elect the cabinet.
And what do you make of Jeremy Corbyn's new shadow cabinet?
Well, it's the first time that there's been a majority of women, so that has to be applauded.
But not in major positions.
Well, it depends what you mean by major. I don't agree.
Shadow Chancellor.
I'm sorry. I mean, one of the major positions is already regarded as the Home Office. I would put health more important than the Home Office. So I don't buy your nonsense about what the press tell you are major positions. I believe they've changed dramatically over the years.
And about Denis Healey, he went back in the army, he was back in Oxford, he was a communist, and then he fought against hard left, you and Tony Benn in
What do you mean hard
Party.
left? No, he didn't vote against, he didn't fight
That's what
against
he told
that.
me. That's what he told me. He said that.
Well, I never regarded myself as a hard left, even despite Denis Healey saying so. I was a man that came from the coal mines, and I was somebody that wanted to see a lot of change. And I came to Parliament principally because the miners said, we're losing a lot of pits, Dennis, and we need more people down in Parliament from the mining industry to speak up on behalf of miners that are losing their jobs. That's why I'm here in Parliament, not because I chose to come here.
But what do you regard yourself as, if not your ideological position in your party?
Well, I'm on the left, but I'm not a hard left. Who invented this hard left? It's come from the Murdoch press, and you've bought it. I mean, to me, I get the impression more and more listening to you that you've been indoctrinated by the Murdoch and the right-wing press. It's a sad state of affairs, but I might as well tell you, that's what I think.
But it's very,
Because you trot out these phrases just like they've invented.
No, when I did Denis Healey's last interview,
I don't care what Denis Healey said.
But he told me that he was in Parliament for 40 years and he had to fight the hard left of the party for 20 years.
I was never part of that hard left because I never recognised myself as a hard left.
Was Tony Benn part of that?
No, I never regarded him as hard left either. When Tony Benn first came to Parliament after the Second World War, his best pals in Parliament were people like Shirley Williams, Tony Crossland, and so on. I mean, it was only as a result of what happened in the 1970s when suddenly the Tories decided to introduce an Industrial Relations Act in order to hamstring the unions that Tony Benn started marching with me round London. Did that make him hard left? Not in my opinion. We were the sensible left, irrespective of what Denis Healey says.
And some people...
I've never recognised that phrase. You might like it, but that's your problem, not mine. And
Denis Healey, when we talk about Denis Healey, we talk about the best Prime Minister that Britain never had.
Well, I never said that.
You don't.
Well, there's loads of people never became Prime Minister that people thought might one day. It's another one of those nonsense phrases dreamed it up by journalists who got nothing else to say.
And do you think that, because now it's about your party and Denis Healey is, so do you think that in what ways do you think that your party has shifted its position since the 1980s?
Hardly at all. There's still about 25 socialists within the Parliamentary Labour Party, and it's roughly the same percentage that they were when I came in 1970. And all this romantic rubbish that you get from the Murdoch press is a load of nonsense.
And what do you make of
If Jeremy Corbyn hadn't have had the votes of some people that would admit that they're not socialists, but they thought they ought to give him a chance to get on the sheet, you know as well as me that he had about 20 votes from the left. That's all they were.
And why did he win?
So why do you imagine that the place is full of left-wingers if he had to have some people from the centre of the party in order to get on the sheet?
Why did he, in your view, why did he win by a huge mandate amongst your supporters?
Because he was more effective in the campaign than anybody else.
And his arguments as well?
Oh, without a doubt.
But why then the parliamentary party doesn't agree with his views, with most of his views?
Because most MPs have already told you, ever since I walked through these doors in 1970, the Parliamentary Labour Party has been comprised of roughly about 70 to 80 on the centre, in the centre and on the right. And it's never changed dramatically in all the years and all the elections I've taken part in. But the newspapers, especially the Murdoch press, try to give you the impression that somehow or other there's a great left-wing surge. I've not seen it in Parliament.
And do you want Jeremy Corbyn to campaign
Otherwise, Jeremy Corbyn would have got enough nominations without the centre-right giving him the nominations. Just do the arithmetic. You don't need me to answer that question. You know for a fact that he could not have got on that voting paper were it not for the fact that some people in the middle of the party gave him their nomination, even though they said they weren't going to support him.
And do you want Jeremy Corbyn to campaign?
So how many more times have I got to convince you?
No, no. But do you want
No,
Jeremy
but it's
Corbyn?
like me using a hammer and chisel to convince you, because it's the same question over and over again
no,
that you
it's-
keep
no, it's
repeating,
over
and you
Europe.
like straight from murder.
No, it's over Europe. Do you want Jeremy Corbyn to campaign for Britain to leave the European Union?
It's up to him.
But what's your position? Your personal.
My position has been different from most people in the Parliamentary Labour Party, because I'm the only one in Parliament, I suppose, because I've been here long enough, to have voted against every single treaty.
Why?
Why? Not because I'm a flag waver, like the Tories, but because I believe eventually the European Union will fail. And I think I've been proved right up to now. And I forecast that when they enlarged the European community from 12 to 27, that most of those countries from the ex-Soviet bloc would turn out to be right-wing. And they are.
So you're not very optimistic about David Cameron's renegotiations? with
No,
his
of course, that's
counterparts?
all. That's a bit of a charade.
Are they going to be the same as Harold Wilson in 1975?
No, because Harold Wilson genuinely said to people that this is a chance for you to either stay in Europe or get out.
And he allowed a free vote in his cabinet.
And he allowed a free vote in the cabinet, and
Was it a
people.
good thing?
Pardon?
Was it a good thing to?
Yeah, of course it was. But Cameron daren't do that now. Because Cameron wants to stay in Europe, but give the impression that he's not really in favour. But we all know that he is.
And do you think that ministers?
So it's a game, it's a charade.
And do you think that the ministers they're not allowed to express their views over the referendum?
Well, they did in Harold Wilson's day in 1975, but Cameron won't allow that.
And if the UK leaves
And the other Tories haven't got the guts to fight it.
and if we leave the EU, will Britain be better off or worse off?
Well, personally, I think there are more companies now in Britain who have got workers that are selling goods to Europe and elsewhere, that they will, by and large, those bosses, like say Toyota in Derbyshire, will probably tell their workers on the morning of the referendum, don't forget to vote to stay in.
And what do you make of government's trade unions bill, which got a
It
bid?
stinks. It really is a savage attack upon working people.
In what ways?
In what ways? By telling them they can't have a strike unless they get more than 50% voting, and 40% of those that vote must be voting in favour of the strike. There isn't a single MP in Parliament that can say that they've done that over the years.
And do you think that the Tories they're shifting to the right? So that's
Of
what-
course they are right wing.
back to Thatcher years.
Yeah, of course.
But they're saying that we're embracing the centre ground. So
Well, I don't believe a word that Cameron says. That's why I call him Dodgy Dave.
and what are the challenges that he will face over the next 5 years as Prime Minister?
Well, he'll face a challenge from the trade union movement, who will fight this bill. And just like when Ted Heath introduced one, an industrial relations bill in 1971, when that act was tested in real day-to-day life, it was found to be wanting, and then the official solicitor had to go and purge the contempt of 6 dockers who were in Pentonville jail, and that Act of Parliament, as it realised the royal assent, was then put in the long grass and never used again. So don't get the idea that somehow or other, because it might pass a bill, because it's got the majority in the House of Commons, that it's going to survive. Because it has to work in practice.
And do you think that
And that's what didn't work in practice, but then again, probably you don't know about that.